I think one of the most important features of the shift is the rise of India. We are actually increasingly becoming the center of global attention because of the transformation of India. I have not seen so much attention being paid to India in the past. One transformation I feel that we are going through is a sense of greater confidence about our own stability internally. But the other transformation I think we are going through is the transformation in terms of the digital transformation of the country and greater inclusion, financial, greater empowerment, a greater connectivity within the country, greater integration of the market. And AI is also being applied now to war and to destruction and misinformation. So who's going to govern that aspect also? Russia is one of those countries where we have managed to maintain good relations, regardless of all the turbulence in the world, which is a miracle. Our neighborhood is the most important aspect of Indian foreign policy. And we have to do everything possible to keep and maintain good relations with all our neighbors, except Pakistan, which is a different story.
Good evening. Please join me to welcome Ambassador Pankaj Saran, a distinguished diplomat who has served with Indian Foreign Office for more than 4 decades, has contributed to shaping India's neighborhood policy, and also had played pivotal role in shaping national security policy for India as a deputy NSA. Welcome, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Sir, while we discuss our podcast today about geopolitics and changing geopolitical scenarios, today as a world, we are witnessing simultaneous shifts in geopolitics in the context of technology, economics, and we see that world is living through a historic reset in global order. So, from your experience, we would like to know that where does India fit into this changing world order, and what are the challenges and opportunities in front of us?
Well, firstly, thank you very much for having me on this show. It's a great privilege and pleasure to be in Mumbai in your beautiful studio. Thank you so much for
Thank you,
having me.
sir.
Thanks a lot. I think one of the most important features of the shift is the rise of India. I mean, people talk about everything else except the fact that what distinguishes 2026 from the past is that we have a rising power in the whole global firmament. And we are actually increasingly becoming the center of global attention because of the transformation of India. I have not seen so much attention being paid to India in the past. Now, having said that, what is also happening is that we have another power which is rising even faster than us and has its sight set on replacing the existing global hegemon, which is the United States, and that is China. So we have this kind of duopoly or competition between these two big powers, economic, military, technological. So that is happening on the one hand. We are seeing a somewhat lessening of the powers of the erstwhile major power, which was the Soviet Union or Russia. And in this situation today, Europe, which was again at one point in the 19th, 20th century, the center of global kind of geopolitical discourse, and they, in fact, were the headquarters of global colonialism, their power is also declining. So, to put it like this, you have the United States' position as the preeminent or the most powerful, unchallenged hegemon of the world is no longer true. China is rising very fast. There is a competition between the United States and China. Russia's influence is slightly declining. Europe is in trouble. The Western alliance, or let me put it like this, the alliance systems which defined the previous century of the Western alliance or the Soviet alliance, they seem to be crumbling very fast. So the transatlantic alliance between the United States and Europe today is also cracking and crumbling. So what we have is a situation where we have rising powers, we have established powers who are declining in influence, and newer powers like India rising. So we are witnessing all these changes. But the challenge which you talked about is that the international institutions and the system that we built in 1945, they are not geared to this big shift. So, in management, you told me you have also spent a lot of time there. There is a term called change management. So, everyone else in a company or in a firm understands one thing, that you have to grow, you have to manage change. But in the United Nations, it's a static, stagnant body that is living 80 years in the past. They have not been able to willingly, in fact, come to terms or acknowledge that these shifts are taking place. So, this is the challenge for how the international institutions can accommodate these shifts. But for India, the challenge, and I'll talk to the opportunities also, but the challenge is that we are growing and rising in an uncertain world where we do not know, we cannot take friends for granted. There is narrow nationalism, there is greater protectionism, there is greater weaponization of everything you may have. There is, in fact, a breakdown of international rules. And so we are expected to rise, and we are rising in this rather chaotic atmosphere. Now, the opportunities are also very interesting for us because people are willing, the outside world is willing, uh, and acknowledging that there is a big story being said in India. So, from that point of view, I would say that externally, people would like India to rise, minus one or two countries, we can talk about that. But broadly speaking, because we offer a model of socio-economic political development which is very unique. But more importantly, the world realizes, the saner elements in the world, that if 1.4 or 1.5 billion people are able to rise in a peaceful manner and contribute to global stability, that is good for not just India but for the whole world. So we have an opportunity, and uh, because people are ready to accommodate new powers, and we are in effect forcing the door open and saying, look, we are coming, we are confident, and there is optimism in India about our own future. And we possess, talking of opportunities, we possess a lot of attributes uh, which will which will actually be to our benefit if you forecast the next 10 or 20 years in terms of our demographic dividend, skill base, size of market, stability of the political system. These are the opportunities, and I think I am quite optimistic that we will be able to use all these opportunities uh, because, uh, you know, what we used to say in the past, 40, 50 years ago, that the world cannot be built on an alliance system, that every country should have the freedom and the right to determine its own pace, its own path of development. Today, everyone is speaking that same language. So, I would say, in a sense, India has been vindicated for what we have been maintaining consistently over the last 70, 80 years. So, in that sense, these are all the opportunities which exist for us today.
So, very well said. You mentioned about transformation that India is going through to represent itself, as an emerging power in the global context. Can you mention few transformation that India is going through right now and which can be projected globally? For example, one you mentioned is demographic dividend or the skill base that we are growing. Something more, I would say, something on technology front or AI that we can mention as India.
Yeah, I think we're going through multiple transformations. Um One transformation I feel that we are going through is a sense of greater confidence about our own stability internally. After independence and many years after that, there was uncertainty, there was lack of confidence. We were going through many internal problems, insurgencies, uh, separatist movements, political instability,
Aren't
assassination,
we going through few even now?
much less than before. But also, we managed to live through all of those. People were not giving much hope for the Indian Union and for India to grow and rise and all that. I think that one transformation I would say is a greater sense of confidence in society as a whole, in the politics. Second, so that's on a like a from a sociological point of view, political point of view. But the other transformation I think we are going through is the transformation in terms of the digital transformation of the country and greater inclusion, financial, uh, greater empowerment, a greater connectivity within the country, greater integration of the market. Uh, these are, the push towards physical infrastructure. Um, so all of this is having one effect, which is that they're equalizing the population in India across different income groups, across different regions. So when you take digital, for example, or you take infrastructure, or you take the other transformations that I have mentioned, connectivity, I think, is a big transformation. Whether it's by air or land or
Even technology.
technology, these are, I think, this whole set of transformations. And psychologically, I think the states today, that's another transformation which I like, is that the states are becoming more assertive. Their leaderships are more sensitive and conscious of the need to deliver, because if they want to win an election, they have to deliver. People are not very patient anymore. So there is pressure. And that is also a good transformation where the development agenda, let us put it like this, has become a political agenda. So it is not just, of course, there are cases and there are states where still the old calculations work on caste and religion. But I would say that transformation is happening, that development is actually becoming good politics. And so there is that whole, and our youth, which is going to determine whether we make it or not, is also, uh, we have the tier three, tier twos are now feeling that they have vertical social economic mobility, which was not the case. This English speaking elites, which dominated India in the first few decades after independence, I think those days are gone. So if today you have, let's say, an AI application like Bhashini, I mean, the government has decided to focus on that because they want to make all the 22 languages available. Things like this, which give hope to the vast majority. So we are not living only in Delhi, Mumbai, Chennai, and all. We are actually talking tier two, tier three. So there is that diffusion of uh, awareness and hope and ambition and expectation. So, I mean, to bring it all together, I would say, there's a psychological, social transformation. There is a material transformation in terms of income. If you talk about number of people lifted above poverty line, uh, the growth of the GDP in macro terms, the projections in the next 10 years, the technological transformation, the integration transformation, the the transformation in the mindset of our states, which are the integral parts of the union. So all of this is happening now. The only thing is that it's all happening very fast, and whether we have the ability to do it in an orderly way, because people want everything yesterday, and governments are in a rush. And so we have to just make sure that the transformation, uh, we don't overheat, and we do it in a way which maintains social order, social harmony. We have to make sure that every section of Indian society, regardless of caste, religion, creed, they feel that they are a stakeholder and a beneficiary. It We should not make the mistake of leaving people behind or leaving people out. Although there are some, so as you know, there are uneven stories in different states. Some are going well, some are going fast, some are not. So we have to make sure that as we transform, we pay attention also to these kind of imbalances. Um, so that's what I would say. But the bottom line is that India is changing. The pace of change in India in the last 10 years or last 20 years has been more than last 50 years. And everyone you ask will tell you that the pace of change in the next 10 years is going to be more than in the last 20 years.
I agree with you that the pace of change has grown over last decade compared to past years of like India. I mean, when we are talking about India, before we move to questions around technology, AI, how it's shaping the global order, I would bring you to some. I mean, after you listening to you, I'm more curious to few questions around India, and because right now, if you will talk to youth across country or even cities or two-tier cities, you we will interact with people who are talk like very generally people are talking about GDP, price of rupees, or how India is being placed in this global order. I think the diffusion of information because of growing technological or digital transformation, the information is available to the last person.
Yes.
Because the digital penetration is really good in
Correct.
India
Correct.
recently, and it's good also, but the because the information is reaching out to the last person, and now it's shaping people's opinion about foreign policy, which was very restricted to elite class earlier. So how this impact the policy framing and our positioning or a decision making of bureaucrats like you recently?
So it's a very good question, and to the answer, short answer is very difficult. It's it's the biggest challenge. So you're becoming a victim of your own success. So if you have more critics and more people who are as aware of you, then accountability grows, criticism grows, and you are more under the scanner. Where you cannot hide, and people are educated; they're aware. So there is nothing which is today people feel constrained not to say or comment. So the job of the bureaucrat has become very difficult. And with all due respect to my fellow compatriots in the bureaucracy, by definition, bureaucracy is the slowest to move and the slowest to change. But I think if you have to, kickstart the bureaucracy, and you need solid, strong political leadership, and I think that's what Prime Minister Modi, in my view, is giving. He is pushing them as hard as he can, more than perhaps any other prime minister, because he has a very good sense of the pulse. But it's not easy. So the bureaucrat has to be a different individual today than he was uh, 40, 50 years ago. He cannot be the Brown Sahib of the IAS, be like an overlord, have a feudal attitude. It's not easy to change, because that's the mentality of a lot of people, and who actually give the exam to join the civil services only to make full use of these privileges. That has to change. And there is a way to work around it, which is to infuse competition in the system. That means, firstly, you reduce their powers, you know, powers which they need not have. There are some functions which are core: maintenance of law and order, defense of the country, financial stability. But there are many other things which government and bureaucrats should not be interfering with. The job of the bureaucrat, so retooling and reskilling and re-education are critical. So how can we make sure that the bureaucracy keeps pace with this transformation? The question is this transformation happening because of the bureaucracy or despite the bureaucracy? You see that.
The second part is like very interesting and critical.
So if it is the second, then it's not a good story. What we want is for the bureaucrat to be the catalyst, not to be
Very
the
true.
obstacle,
Very true.
or hold it back. But there are some functions which every state and government has to do. You have to be the regulator. You have to be the policy maker. You have to have good law and order, a good, strong, credible judiciary. But there are many other things which we inherited from the British, like the civil service, or the district commissioner or the district collector, even the name district collector. Where did it come from? His job was only to collect the revenue from the farmers on behalf of the British Empire. So that mindset, I think we are changing. Whether we are doing it fast enough is a debate. I think there are regional variations. Some states, the bureaucracy is friendly, business friendly, forward looking. Some they want to preserve, maintain status quo. But you're right. So, therefore, when you have a situation where awareness is diffused and everyone is watching you perform, in a way, it's a good way to keep a tab on you and your performance. So you can't hide, you can't escape, and you're constantly under the scanner, and that is why I think democracy, regular elections, all these are really, if you look at larger countries in the world, many of them have broken up. Many of them have faced political instability, revolutions, riots. Touch wood, we have so far managed.
Yeah. Thanks to bureaucracy as well as citizens, I think that wisdom is still there in India, and that's why maybe we are surviving. Coming back to the core topic of our podcast, which is like around AI and technology. As we spoke earlier in our podcast, that AI is shaping global policies, influencing global policies, and also making an impact on changing global order, world order. Is I mean, in the considering AI and technology, where are we as India right now? And you mentioned two superpowers emerging, or there is battle between USA and China. And I think they are far, far ahead of us compared to AI and technology. So, what is your message in this particular context?
Again, like, look, it's a very good topic and a current topic. AI, is it's called a general purpose technology. I mean, it is universal in its reach and its application. You can use it for anything. We have a lot of reports and books which we have released and written by Indians. So AI, it's not as if we are entering the AI age. I think we have entered the AI age.
Yeah.
Maybe we could not have said this 5 years ago, but in the last 5 years itself, there's been a revolutionary developments in AI. So where are we? I think what I'd like to do for you is to. It's a very general. It's a universe. Artificial intelligence is a world of its own. I would like to break it up, maybe better, or maybe, let's say, more accurate, instead of giving a headline verdict on where we are. Also vis-a-vis the US and China. As far as I know, and people have written, the experts have said it. Basically, the AI world consists of 5 layers. If you want to use AI and as a technology, the basic layer is energy. You must have enough energy to power an AI universe in your country. Energy means electricity, power, etc. The second is you must have the chips, you must have the semiconductors and associated hardware with the chips. The third is you need data. You need data infrastructure. You need data centers, because without the data, you cannot move forward. The fourth is you need the language models, which bring the chips and the data together, and that's how you build those large language models or other models, which lead you to the final stage of the AI world, which is application. And application is where you have maximum value addition, maximum economic advantage, and so on. So if I would like to answer your question by saying which of these five stages we are at as India, it's obvious. And remember, India's. So let's start with the where we have the biggest advantage, which is data. We, according to open source, India accounts for about 20% of global data in the world. So we are actually the gold mine for data because of our sheer number of people. But on the negative side, we are way behind in terms of computing power. And on that, the government has taken some drastic measures by launching a semiconductor mission. They put in $12 billion. As far as I know, there are 12 semiconductor facilities of different kinds currently under construction in India. But somewhere down the line, we lost the plot. I was checking before coming here. Our first semiconductor laboratory, can you imagine, was set up in 1984 in Chandigarh and Mohali, which was under the Department of Space. And in 1984, that is like more than 40 years ago, people had thought of the importance of chips for the future. But at that time, it was under Department of Space because people said, oh, we need the chips only for our satellites and rockets. But from 1984 till today, that factory actually didn't do much work. Had it done, we would have been in a much better place. Uh, on the science side, which is where we also have some advantage, which in terms of people, talent, we have a good, rich, solid pool, so we are good there. But we need to do much. Then the other place where we are disadvantaged, talking of chips, today almost I think 85% of India's chip requirements are imported, and almost the majority of those come from China. And there is one country, Taiwan, which is accounting for the bulk of the. So we have vulnerability there. But the other problem which we are facing, is rare earths, critical minerals to make the chips. So it's a mixed bag. There are some places where we are good, some places where we are not. But we are very good, for example, in applications and use cases. In fact, people say that we are already the use case capital of the world. But how are we on large language models? We're not very good. We're not very good. We are behind the US, behind China. But broadly, as an overarching kind of if you want to give a ranking or a number, I think most people say that, we are almost positioned as number 3 in the AI world. But we have a lot of work to do. So if we disaggregate each of these things, then we know where we stand. So that's how I would put it to you. So on the US China, it's also very interesting. We are entering a new world in which technology is power. People talk about techno nationalism, that whoever controls the technologies are going to determine who is going to control global power. And so we are entering a phase of haves and have nots. We could run the risk of being a digital colony, that if your data and my data and the country's data is shared on a cloud over which I don't have control, or which is not located in India, it's a problem. If your mind or thought process is going to be governed by supranational entities which are beyond the control of any international governance architecture, then you are at the mercy of people like Elon Musk and others of Google, of Microsoft, of Amazon Web Services. So if these are the new power centers, then that's another world we're living in. Because till now, the assumption was that a government or a country or a state is the most powerful entity. But you're now in a world where that is no longer true. Because all of these names which I've taken, many of their market caps and valuations are probably more than the GDPs of almost 80-90% of the world.
Very true. Very true.
So when you have these behemoths, these big tech who are governing our lives, then who's going to govern them? So we have, while you talk about the United States and China, I would also like to talk about the entities and the enterprises within these two countries, who perhaps are more powerful in some ways relative to the rest of the world in terms of their economic muscle, financial muscle, technological muscle, and so on.
So, sir, you are saying that AI and these entities who are into technology are kind of mobilizing for, or they are the determinant factor of global power right now?
Absolutely. They are already, and they are going to becoming more. The difference between the US and China is that in the case of China, they're state sponsored. But in the case of the United States, also, the distinction is not that, it's not that uh, clear, because if you have Anthropic, who's working on the instructions of the United States government, or who is at the, so the US Cloud Act is an example which says that yes, you may be a private company, but if I want the data from you, even if it is Indian data, under my act, you're liable to give me the data. Uh, so there is, yes, there is state sponsorship also, and state encouragement to these companies. So yeah, I mean, you are facing the situation where um, states such as the US and China will leverage these entities and this power to determine what you think, not just what you think and how how you behave and so on, but how you live, and also there are no standards now as international standards. Um, Whoever wins the race will write the rules, and if once the rules are written, then you go back to the colonial era, where there are two sets of people in the world: one who write the rules and the other who
Who
follow.
follow. So, like when we are talking about the global structures, there are institutions like IMF, World Bank, World Economic Forum. There were global institutions who were like playing a key role, or who are playing key role in shaping policies. As far as the role was around economic policies, more around economic policies than peace, conflict, and such things were addressed. So, do you see that this institution has to, change their scope to get more into AI technology and the entities that we just spoke about, and kind of creating some regularities around them?
I think so. I mean, I
I mean,
think
there are any efforts already began, or we should start?
very, I think very incipient. This process of AI summits began 4 or 5 years ago. We hosted the AI summit, Global AI Summit
Yeah.
in Delhi a few months ago. Purpose of this summits is to actually bring together a set of countries to discuss rules, governance, institutions, to create from scratch. It's not going to be easy because of many, many reasons. Firstly, because the bigger players, they recognize that firstly they have to agree whether they want to be bound by international rules, or whether they want a freedom to do what they want. They don't like to be bound by rules. So there is that political will issue. So it's not going to be easy, but the process has begun to shape institutions. Um, but every technology is a dual use in a sense. It has a good purpose and a bad purpose. So that is another problem, that you can govern AI, let us say, for civil application, for education, health, medicine, all the good things of life. But what is happening is that AI is also being applied now to war and to destruction and to
Misinformation.
misinformation. So, who's going to govern that aspect also is a big issue. Uh, I think tomorrow we are attending an event which is going to discuss this question. This is where the big deficit is. But I think we have a long way to go. And if you look at how technology regimes have developed in the past, it gives you some indication. Uh, but unfortunately, our experience from the past is that global regimes, legal regimes, and all, they mirror or reflect global balance of power. So it's very difficult for some countries, or a set of countries, or an individual country, to sit on the table and claim morality or righteousness. That is not the way the world has worked. I mean, if you look at the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, prime example, clearly some countries said we are allowed and we can keep nuclear weapons, but the rest of you are not allowed, and you're not supposed to keep nuclear weapons. The clear case of a haves and have nots. We don't want to repeat that mistake. So, other domains also, like space, biological weapons, So when you have these institutions like the IMF, World Bank, and all which are created, that was at a different time when the West was the dominant. They were victors in the World War. They created the Western world order. These were all instruments. The US dollar was the international currency. Today, the world is more complicated, and therefore, the task of building institutions which have consensus, which everyone is willing to, moment you have a governance structure, architecture, by definition, you have to cede some sovereignty. You can't claim absolute sovereignty. If you sign on to an international document, you're basically saying, yes, I agree that there is something superior to me, and I'm willing to respect that architecture. Question is whether states today are willing. What I see is not very hopeful.
Yeah, you're right. Like you just mentioned the event that we will be approaching, and where we have Sandeep, Mr. Vaslikar's book Beyond the Hype, many realities of AI and realities around AI to discuss. While I go on few questions on that topic, I have like from your answers only, I have two more questions
Please,
for
please.
you.
Yeah, of course.
One is that we are talking about these global entities, market driven entities,
Yes.
basically. So, if we are comparing USA and China, so many of these entities are like originated in USA, many
Yeah.
of them. And we see that China has created, I mean, taken the concept and created their own entity, which is similar and becoming more and more powerful compared to the original entity, which is in USA. Because China also has numbers, so I mean they were able to manage the growth, and now I see that these US based entities are looking at India as for data, because we have numbers and we are became a market for them. So how this is, creating position for us, I mean India, when we are talking about these two like
Yeah.
these two people, USA and China, they are competing with each other, where we see China like following one model, we becoming data to another model. So how do we place, and if we have to, become one of the power center, or we have to become more powerful for whatever we are today, how should we deal with this situation?
So, we have a digital mission, we have the semiconductor mission, we have a data protection act. So, in the last 5, 6 years, a lot has been done to legislate to address all these issues which you are mentioning. One of them is data sovereignty, for example. Now, but there is a contradiction that if you maintain strict, let us say, rules on data sovereignty, um, are you capable of then processing that data? Do you have the data? Firstly, do you have the data centers to store? Do you have the clouds and the cloud services to store? Do you have the processing capacity to store to process that data? You don't have basically today. You also know at the back of your mind that it's not a simple choice. Ideally, in the ideal world, you would like to be the third pillar, not the US, not Chinese. You want to be India. But can you beat today? I don't think so. You have to be realistic. You can say all these things, but at the end of the day, we have to have some realism. I think we made a lot of progress. We are moving very fast, but are we there yet? No. Will we be there? I think we will. So, in the interim, as a bridging gap, the question then arises about choice, this or that, and where do we fit? There, I think I would say there are no good choices than this, but the least or the lesser bad choice from our point of view is if you want to get hooked up with the Chinese ecosystem of AI, you can't free yourself up after that. But can you completely delink from China? No, because you need those raw materials, you need those critical minerals, you need those rare earths, and they have the processing capacity. They're feeding the whole world. It's not only India. But beyond that, do I want to get into their AI supply chains? I'm not sure we do. In the case of the United States, because you see, technology also has a certain component of values and ideology. We can't dismiss that aspect of technology. So there is a certain latent comfort within India because of the common values we share with the Western world as such, of aligning more with the United States or with Europe. Now, Europe is also struggling, by the way. I mean, they do not have that third pole, they don't have the capability, heavily reliant on the American companies. In fact, there's a big fight going on between across the Atlantic, where Trump is saying, I'm going to impose 100% tariffs on if you touch my big tech companies and all. But the big tech companies are running Europe also. So I would say what we should do is to leverage our strengths, which is data, which is talent, which is skills, which is science. And after all, in the digital revolution, in the Y2K 2000 and all, we did all that. I mean, we became the back office of the world.
Yeah.
So I don't see why, in the case of AI, we cannot. So if we allow different horses to run at different speeds, we can allow our use case applications to gallop forward, fast forward. We can easily become the global capital for that. But at the end of the day, I think we have to, if we are going to, provide our data to American companies, make them richer, make them better, we have to extract a price. I don't think we should allow any free riders, and we should insist on some things like data centers or cloud or this, that. And meanwhile, keep developing your own capabilities. I mean, uh, even the Americans don't have their semiconductor capacity is weak. I mean,
Yes.
Taiwan is still dominant. So, I would say that on each of these five aspects of AI which we discussed, we can decide on which of those, how much to align, or not even align is the wrong word, how much to work with or cooperate with either the Chinese or the Americans.
In Sandeep's book, Beyond the Hype, Many Realities of AI, he argues that challenge have become civilizational, while our response is national. You have been core part of the state machinery. And I think you have been part of designing or building that response, which is national. What is your argument about this?
In the real world, there are very few people who think of civilizations. When you're in the real world making policy for the country and the responsibility rests on you, I'm not saying myself individually, but on the system, your first priority is to safeguard the country and the nation. So, unfortunately, focus on the nation dominates focus on civilization. And uh, and most of the effort in the initial periods, particularly in the case of a new technology, has to be on what you do uh, for the nation. But over time, you also have to focus on global goods, on the global architecture, on what is good for civilization, what is not. And so both processes have to flow in parallel. You have to keep that eye. But the response, I'm afraid, initially has to be of national interest, which comes first. Because if you don't safeguard your national interest and you just talk about civilization, it's a nice, noble thought, but you know, it's not going to solve your real problems and not going to take you very far. I mean, you may just simply lose out uh, in a very, very brutal uh, race for power and influence, because everyone is not thinking or is not as, let us say, charitable as you are. But yes, civilization is important, and someone in the government will therefore then focus on civilizational issues, protecting, the human race, what's good for it. So that is also an important thing. In fact, we have contributed as India, and we have shown, whether it is in environment, whether it is in development, whether it is on health, we have shown that we have a model which is applicable beyond India, across the civilization. I mean, you take lifestyle, you take yoga, you take this, that. So we have shown that India has shown that we have. But for the present, for the AI aspect, I think initially uh, the kind of default position in the initial period is you first secure yourself, because if you're late or if you're slow, what are you going to tell your people? And they will ask you, where were you? What were you doing? But I'm not saying that you shouldn't look at civilization or the human race or the future of the human race. Of course we should. I mean, on the nuclear, I mean, which country actually used a nuclear bomb? And what were they thinking about civilization when they dropped those bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki? You know, where was that consideration for civilization? Uh, the so-called, before that, the Oppenheimer moment. So you had technology, you're worried about its devastating effects, but history is replete with all these examples, where technology is harnessed, it is used. Sometimes, so that is why we created all these United Nations and all, so that people could sit and think of bigger issues, larger issues, beyond the nation, beyond national interest. Unfortunately, I think today we are living in a very difficult world, which is rather pessimistic.
Let's not be pessimistic. My concluding question is going to be about optimism. So
Good.
let's find some more and more optimism as we
Sure.
go forward in our podcast. So we were discussing that information diffusion is huge
Yeah.
in India. Right now, we just discussed about building a national response. I heard one of your podcast recently, and and also the very popular movie Durandar, or
Yes.
earlier it was Uri.
Right.
So this kind of content in terms of movie or web series is also shaping that response and creating impact on our youth or
Yeah.
citizens. So coming back to our core question about AI technology, its impact on defense, or conflict, or shaping global powers, and at the same time, this kind of narratives are creating an impact on our citizens. So uh, I mean, what impact it has on policymakers, or what caution should the policymakers, even the communication policymakers, or I would say this creators, content creators, should take care of, considering the national interest at the core.
No, I couldn't understand whether you think what is happening
I
is
don't
bad
want
or
to
good.
say, I don't want to
You're
conclude it
passing
is
any
good
value and
or
judgment.
no, I don't
Okay.
want to say it is good or bad,
Right.
but it has huge impact.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
mean,
yeah.
Dhurendra has
Yeah, yeah.
created a perception the way defense agencies are working, or creating an impact. What is the purpose of that creator? We don't want to judge his intentions. We don't want to judge intentions of even what can I say? I don't want to create a hypothesis that
Right.
government is
Right.
using this or that. But yes, it has an impact, and it has an impact about perception of governance entities among the minds of citizens. So uh, it, on one hand, the communication or the content is making impact, and on the other side, we know that this information diffusion is going to impact us and the policy at large. So should there be some
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
regularization?
Okay, fine. Look,
I
listen.
mean,
Yeah.
we should not just ride on this tide that right now this is favorable for me,
Yeah,
so
yeah,
let
yeah,
it go.
yeah. So, social media, as we are all discovering, is a very lethal medium and a weapon and a platform which is revolutionizing the way we think. Now, you're talking about Durandar and other content on social media. Let me tell you, put it to you another way.
Even the influencers.
Influencers. But so it's a serious problem, and we have to recognize it, we have to accept it, and you have to deal with it. You cannot allow people to be misled or to be brainwashed. We have to now there is a debate, I mean, there's a constant debate on how much to regulate, how much to censor, and how much freedom that you give. So government has come up with a lot of laws in the last few years. They're updating the laws also on the liability of a platform, liability of the content, what is the division of these liabilities. But I would say, yes, you're right. We have to be aware. Now, the question is, what guardrails or safeguards do you have to prevent misuse, exploitation, uh, propaganda, etc.? Now, you can have a whole body of laws, legislation, you have your judiciary, but you have to have some, uh, you have to have some social consensus on what is permissible, what is not permissible. Now, if you stop a Dhurandhar kind of a content or related kind of content, you could be justifiably accused of being of censoring content. Now, that's why some countries have taken some drastic steps of banning social media for children below a certain age, etc. But there is an even more deeper problem. We are living in a Googleized world. That if your search engine on your device is being dominated by 2 or 3 companies in the world who basically control your life, that is also a very serious risk to uh, how you exist as a human being. So, if 90% of the searches on any device or anything which a child in India in a tier 2, tier 3 is going through is controlled by Google or associated, it's a real problem. And then you have no control over what Google is throwing up and what algorithms. So we are living in a world of algorithms. So I think if you dig deeper into this issue of influencers or content, you'll open a can of worms. I mean, the problem. So what even content like Dhurandhar or anyone else is doing is he's playing on the algorithm. He's using a platform over which actually he also has no control, because he's using Instagram or Twitter or X or Google or whatever. He doesn't own it. He doesn't control it. Or YouTube. We are going to be on YouTube. You don't own YouTube. So, uh, so I would say that the problem is bigger also and more serious. That if you're going to get popped up and say, this is what you should be eating or drinking or wearing or visiting or thinking, that's also so we are being conditioned. So the question, of course, people have asked a lot of the thinkers on technology: so are we the consumers actually, or are we the producers of these platforms?
Yeah, the
You know,
question is still
because
unanswered.
everything you do, every time you open your device, you're just making that algorithm better and better.
Very true. Very true.
So, but yeah, I think we should allow all views to be published and all barring some. So we have to have a consensus. Parliament exists only for this. You have a political consensus that this is okay, this is not okay.
Okay. Hopefully, we'll have some consensus in Parliament.
We should. That's the only way we can live.
In Mr. Vaslikar's book, he shows that AI has beneficial side, which India is presently harnessing. AI also has harmful sides. AI can be misused by terrorists to produce chemical, biological weapons and also to launch cyber attacks. The recent release of Mythos model proves that risk of AI undermining cybersecurity is very serious. Should India create some kind of a system to evaluate advanced models improved from abroad, which can be huge problem if terrorists assess them?
I think absolutely. Absolutely. So, what we have done is in the last few years, see, we started with cyber security. We created institutions. We generated capacity. You've trained people. Firstly, like say 10, 15 years ago, you didn't have the capacity to police, to monitor, to regulate, even cyber. Now you have developed, after it's taken, I mean, 1 or 2 decades to do that. We have to do the same for AI, but we have to do it much faster, much quicker, on a much bigger scale. That work is still going on. I'm not sure how widespread it is. But yes, we have to be very careful. In fact, on the mythos issue, I remember our finance minister took a meeting of all the banks a few weeks ago because of the lethal and the deadly potential of the model, which as Sandeep has written in his book. In fact, I'll probably refer to it tomorrow. He has brought out the full chain of how a model can be used to surprise you, to deceive you, to take control over your software without your knowing it, and to even generate new software. And so, this kind of stuff, as we discussed short while ago, is going to be music, to the ears of the terrorists, because you don't need much money. I mean, you don't. So you can sit on a small device or a laptop or get access, and you can create havoc. So it is very dangerous. We have to have some mechanisms to screen, to allow, but policing the cyberspace and the digital space is not easy. As you know, I mean, even petty cyber crimes today have become so commonplace. So yes, I think absolutely AI models have to be monitored, have to be vetted, we must have a mechanism. He has made some suggestions in the book of a National AI Council. He's talked about a bigger role for the National Security Council of India to play a frontal role. They are playing a role. They are in fact driving a lot of the stuff. But it is work in progress as we speak. All of this is going on. And so this is what I told you in the beginning, that when you have these companies, Anthropic and others, who are developing these models, they're not government organizations, they're private people. I mean, if you look at Elon Musk, or you look at SpaceX, or if you look at Starlink, 50,000 satellites. I mean, how are you going to monitor, control? That is going to be the next big challenge for us.
Or any international institution or think tank who is taking lead in this?
So, Sandeep, one of the solutions or suggestions he has made is that we should let us suppose, he said in his book, should we consider something like the International Atomic Energy Agency to monitor? Because the IAEA does that for the nuclear, for the civil and the military. They're supposed to monitor every nuclear reactor, safeguards, inspections, make sure it's for military or for civil, uh, safety standards, all that. So he's one of his ideas in this is, should we not have such a counterpart for AI? It's premature. Uh, all of this requires trust, political will, that I don't see happening today. So, but we must push for it, because we need to have some regulation, uh, some body. Now, who and how, we have to see how what we can do best. Pending that, if you cannot have an international agreement, let us try and get a few countries influential who think the same way, who can get together, who can have their own arrangement, and who can promote and propagate the need for this kind of thing. So instead of going for 100%, you do a few countries who think like you, who are as concerned and worried, and who agree on the basics, and let them. So this is what India and France, I think, are trying to do, and other countries.
Okay, France. You were ambassador to Russia and have watched India's multi alignment up close. So, we were discussing the changing world order. How do you see India Russia relationship changing in the view of this changing global order?
Russia is one of those countries where we have managed to maintain good relations, regardless of all the turbulence in the world, which is a miracle. And there are, of course, good reasons for it. But the fact is that it is one country with whom we have managed to maintain good relations, particularly since President Putin became president in 2000. So, last 26 years, regardless of all the ups and downs, we have managed. Also, of course, I would say, even in the Soviet times, When we had the Soviet Union, we had good relations. With Russia also, we have managed, barring first 10 years, which was a problem. Uh, I don't know whether you want to know why, but we have managed, and there are many reasons for it.
Can you cite few?
Yeah, I mean, look, firstly, most obvious is we don't have a common border. There is no border dispute. There is no difference between us and them. They have helped us when we needed help. And I think we've helped them also when they needed help, when they were facing, let us say, international isolation. So it's been a mutual kind of give and take. Um, but the most important is that we don't have any political differences or disputes. We are not threatened by Russia like we are threatened by China. Uh, and there is a broad consensus between India and Russia on our region. Uh, of course, we have differences. That is inevitable in any country with every relationship. But I would say it's been a constant in our foreign policy and in this whole changing. During the Cold War, we had good relations. After the Cold War, we had good relations. Today, we have got good relations. But we have to keep working at it. We can't take it for granted.
Okay. We were like discussing this bipolar powers emerging USA and China.
Yeah,
I am like, and we have a neighborhood.
right.
In this conflict between US and China, and I don't know if I should say a conflict, but we see China being very strategic with India's neighborhood countries.
Right.
And yes, of course, we have a neighborhood policy. We have got a relation with our neighbors. We have helped them in their crisis time. But do we see that this economic approach is missing in India's alliance with its neighbors compared to China?
See, China is obviously richer. They've got more money, more capital to invest than we have. You're talking of $20 trillion. We have $4 trillion. So the capacity pockets are deeper. They're throwing money, and a lot of the money they're throwing is not for the love of the neighbors, our small neighbors. Is basically to spread influence, to cut India out, and basically to kind of, in a way, let's say, encircle India. So they're using money power uh, to pursue strategic goals. In this situation, so this is a reality, and it's happening more in the last, you know, last few years. What do we do? I mean, uh, our neighborhood is the most important aspect of Indian foreign policy. And we have to do everything possible to keep and maintain good relations with all our neighbors, except Pakistan, which is a different story. But minus Pakistan, we have to. And we are doing it. Now, sometimes, there are cycles of good and bad days because of various reasons, some out of your control, where a relationship may not be or may go dip and then tomorrow it may improve. But if you look at our economic engagement with the neighbors, it's quite a lot. And in terms of trade, investment, development, people to people. But the most important in the neighborhood when you look at is economy is very important. I agree, because they're all poor, they're developing, they need investment, they need infrastructure. But from an overall neighborhood policy, the strength which we have, no one else has, which is basically your historical links, your cultural links, your people to people links. We speak the same language, we are part of the same civilization, whether they like it or not. They're not part of the Chinese civilization or the Russian or the Western, they're part of the Indian civilization. Political borders formed only a few decades ago. So that's our real core strength. And we have to use that soft power, as you call it. But not only soft power, but foundational basic links which can never be broken. So our neighborhood policy is a mix of all these different tools and instruments. And with each neighbor, we have to pursue a separate kind of policy. We cannot have one size fits all. So if we are doing with Nepal or with Bhutan or with Bangladesh or with Sri Lanka or with Myanmar or with Afghanistan. Each of this has a different history, different peculiarity. And so I think our neighborhood policy takes all this into account and customizes our approach. Are we successful 100% of the time? Maybe not. But that is the foundation of the policy. And every prime minister, every government in India since 47, for them, and I know it because I've served in those offices, the neighborhood policy is the most important aspect of Indian foreign policy for any prime minister of India. And all of them have focused heavily on the neighborhood.
Interesting. We spoke about economics. You also mentioned trade. I mean, they being
Yeah,
core of the neighborhood policy, but you also said that the cultural roots and
right.
civilization is very important. So, is there any other tools that we are exploring? To harness our neighborhood policy. I mean, if you can mention few.
No, I mean we just have to keep this in our mind. Of course, you see, one of the other things we are doing, which we have done, and again is a foundational element, is connectivity and integration. What are the people to people? What are your so there is connectivity, physical, let us say, land, rail, bus, sometimes sea. That's physical connectivity. You may have digital connectivity, like if you go to Nepal, for example, can you use your Paytm or your UPI to make a payment? That is another kind of connectivity. Integration, I mean, if, for example, a Nepali national comes, he lives in India, he's given national treatment, he doesn't need a visa. So, how do you integrate the markets? Uh, so, so I would say connectivity, even energy connectivity, power lines, power flowing from India to some country, Bangladesh, or power flowing from Bhutan to India. If you look at the Bhutan India example, very interesting, tiny country. Bhutan's total population is 6 lakhs. It'll be the size of BKC, right? It's a tiny country, maybe even less than that. So he's selling a huge amount of power to you, and in return, they're earning huge amount of money. So that's one example. But we are selling power to Bangladesh. So I would say there are so integration and connectivity uh, are two elements also which are very important apart from and better infrastructure along the border, better border management, um, and culture. Of course, you see there is, you know, whenever a Sri Lankan leader comes or a leader from Myanmar comes, where does he go? He goes to Bodh Gaya. That's the first place he goes to. So Buddhism, Hinduism, Sikhism, I mean, these are all, realities that bind all of us together. And uh, so this is the whole mix that we follow. It's a very interesting, very complicated. Uh, of course, sometimes there is a mismatch of expectations from our smaller neighbors. They are not happy with what India is doing. They say, you're a bully, you're too big, you're mistreating us,
But we are big.
but you are big and you can't help your size. So this is a constant conversation, dialogue we have, not just with their governments, but even with the media, with the think tanks, with their academia, with their intellectuals, that you tell us, what is a better way, what should India do? And there are also some things which you have to do, right? I mean, you also have to kind of respect India's interests, security interests, other interests. So it's a very interesting, constant work in progress.
We are talking about our neighborhood countries, and you mentioned all of them, and you said that Pakistan is another example. I mean, we have cordial association with all other neighbors. When again we are talking about USA and China, and I think Pakistan being our neighbor plays a very notorious role, even with India-US
Yeah.
relationships and India-China relationship. So, like considering our neighborhood policy or even as a part of foreign policy, our protecting our national interest, safety, security, defense. So how do I mean, where are we right now when it comes to Pakistan?
We are where we were in 1947. Pakistan.
I'll rephrase my question, specifically in the context of AI, technology, and
Ah,
these two
okay.
superpowers.
Oh, okay. Okay, so that's a specific question. I'm not very familiar with Pakistan's status in terms of AI and technology. Uh, I'm not.
But you have been part of NSA. Did you observe anything in this border, India-Pakistan border conflict, that AI, technology, drones being used, or information war? Information war is a new thing, especially when it comes to India, Pakistan, or conflict zone within Kashmir. So something
Yeah,
around that.
okay, fine. Okay, so if you look at, let's say, Kashmir, right, because this is a long drawn 100% influence ops, use of satellite communications, you know, sending messages, signals, feeding the terrorists. So, yes, you're right. I mean, they have been using these methods for years to bypass. They have been using internet, television, radio. Those are the old traditional methods. Now, what has happened is that they're using more sophisticated influence ops, AI, social media to subvert. Because all this at the end of the day then lands up being a battle of the mind. So you have to reach the mind of the person concerned. So yes, they have modified their methodology and their modus operandi. Uh, Also using a lot of the Chinese help and assistance in terms of technology. And because it is relatively low cost, it doesn't cost very much. So they have a whole ecosystem, a whole universe out there which is just pumping in this kind of misinformation to create disharmony, to create disaffection, etc., in India, not just Kashmir. So yes, you're right. They're leveraging it to disturb and harm and hurt India. On the other question of drones, etc., this is a more recent. It's happened in the last 4 or 5 years after Ukraine and all that. And here, of course, we saw last year in Sindoor a lot of Turkish drones, Pakistani drones, a lot of Chinese help in terms of intelligence, survey, reconnaissance, what we call ISR, using space-based assets to listen, to watch, to see, to observe, to detect, to neutralize. So they have all that backup available to them. So the threat or the capability has grown, and we have to be cognizant and we have to respond. And I can tell you, we are always one step ahead of the challenge.
Taking this question on a like taking clues from this answer, as a deputy NSA, your portfolio ran from maritime security to Arctic. You are also heading NatStrat right now.
Yeah,
And we were just discussing like use of technology, or taking Chinese help,
right.
like we just mentioned the Pakistan as an example. So what would be your suggestion to maximize India's interest and minimize threats to India's national security from AI today or any new technology in future?
Just develop your own capabilities. Don't rely on anyone, even if it is expensive, even if it is time consuming. There are no friends in this business. Dependency and getting into the wrong supply chains, being, allowing yourself to get vulnerable to weaponization is the most dangerous. So the lessons we learned after COVID pandemic, after 2020 Galwan and Ukraine and everything else, was stand your own feet. There's no shortcut. Uh, yeah, you can have a bridging period, of a few years till you build your own capabilities. But keep eye on the ball, don't lose focus, and develop now that whole ecosystem is complicated. I mean, you start from talent, start from finance, start from the startup, systems you have, government patronage. Uh, be ready To fail, don't think that every time you start something you will succeed. So, failure in the process of innovation is not a bad thing, but you must innovate. Either you innovate or perish. I mean, that's the that's the harsh truth. So, from a national security point of view, national self-reliance is critical. We are now discovering it in the defense field. What we are doing in the last 5-10 years is there's a massive increase in defense indigenization. Because what was the lesson you took away from the 60 years? You can import as much as you want. You can spend billions of dollars importing defense equipment, but there's nothing, no substitute for making it here. And even if it is more expensive, even if it takes more time, but you can't live your whole life as a nation just sitting and importing. That is not the solution. So, to answer the question, it's very simple. Just do it here. There is no other shortcut. And if having agreed on that proposition that you have to do it here, the next question comes how and who will do it and what is the success rate and so on. So, there's a separate set of issues. But at a fundamental level, the question is there is no shortcut. I mean, you just have to. And we have had some good successes. I mean, your nuclear program, atomic energy program, your space program, your digitization program, all of these. I mean, even starting with green revolution, if you look at agriculture. So you've had all these successes. Um, I think in some of these we started late. We should have started much earlier. Um, but once you gather the initial momentum and you have a few successes, then confidence grows, and then your base level grows. You have the talent available. Most of these times, in these cases, you do not have the people, you don't have the skills. So if your university systems are moving up, your startups, your finance is available, then one thing leads to another, and you create the right environment.
So Swadeshi or Make in India approach is very important.
I think so. I mean, for national security particularly. Now, if you ask, okay, look, I concede that you can't have 100%. No country has. But if you can't have 100%, then make sure that the dependency you have,
It's
which you
less.
can't, yeah, is less, or you're dependent on someone who's a friend,
Trusted
trusted
partners.
partner.
Like we discuss national security, defense, education, communication, digitization, economic, world order. AI and technology is making impact in every sector.
Absolutely.
We also discuss how India is, in terms of policies responding to all this. But if we have to prioritize, what should be on the top priority?
For AI,
Yeah.
I think at the moment, you just have to increase your compute power. You have the data, so focus on compute and focus on innovation. I mean, these are the two things. And I would say the third, maybe all three in parallel, is talent, the talent pool. But you have to have the 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 capability for GPUs and computing, which you don't have right now. So we started. I mean, you got these 12 and reduced dependencies like on chips. So I would say 2 or 3 sectors in AI where you should start moving fast, and I think that's what is being done. Um, so that's how I would put it.
And for all the points that we discussed, I think there was a lot of takeaways for bureaucracy, policymakers,
Yeah,
think tanks, leaders. But I would like to end this podcast on, and would request you to end it on a note for youngsters, because you are talking about innovation and we are talking about creating our own Made in India entities, which will, kind of drive AI, technology, market, set up the trends. So, what is your message for the youth?
well,
I mean,
yeah,
to in
yeah,
order to stand in this changing world order and have our own strong AI technology setup, what would you suggest?
I would say shed your fears, go for it. No one's taking your jobs away. Grasp the technology, because if you do not do that, we oldies are not going to do it. So you are the ones who can do it. Don't be scared of grasping the technology, harnessing it, using it. So be a user, but also be a creator. Go to your classrooms, tell your teachers, faculty, you should be in a position to also innovate and research and make mistakes. But do it, because you can't just be a passive recipient of the technology. You have to create the technology. And so I would say, and don't look all the time at government that, I am waiting for someone else to come and help me. This idea that you can do it on your own, that is the beauty of India. Your entire DPI, your digital public infrastructure, the India stack, was built only on atomized individual, layer after layer after layer. We are not the Chinese top down, we are bottom up. So for the youth, I would say you're at the cusp of a technological revolution. So be ready to face it, absorb it, but also contribute to it. So don't just simply take it as it comes. Uh, Try and say to yourself, why can't I make another Google? Why can't I make another Microsoft? Why can't I make another YouTube? What is holding me back from becoming an Elon Musk in India, or someone else, or a Nvidia head in India? Or an Alibaba? I mean, what's holding you back? Is it the system? Is it your faculty? Is it your teacher? Or is it your parents? What is preventing you? Because when you're a 16 or a 20-year-old, you know, you have access to all the technology of the world now. Today, the world is flat. You can't say that I don't know. You know. In fact, you know too much. So I would say to the youth, the next 10 years in India, the next 20 years, you're going to be the center of gravity of change in the world. It's not Europe. It's not the United States. It's not China. It's going to be us. And so, you know, face up to that reality. It's a good reality. And the sky's the limit. And as we just discussed, the days of the old elite are gone in India. Today, everyone is equal. It doesn't matter whether you speak English or Marathi or Tamil. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter where you live. So, in that sense, I think we are a much more equal society, inclusive society, and that's all good for the youth.
This was Ambassador Pankaj Saran. I think on a concluding note, he has given a message to youth that AI has given us a wide scope of opportunities and you just have to go and grab it. Thank you, sir. Thank
Thank
you
you.
for the conversation.
Thank you very, very much. It's a pleasure to be with you and wish you all the best. And thank you very much for having me.
Thank you, sir.